Almost there. Here we go. Here we go. Okie dokie. Just going to share this and then we will start the show. Thank you for your patience. Here we go. Okay, I think that will do it. I think that will do it. Here we go. Time to start the show. Welcome. It's 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I guess for this particular purpose, I am Dr. Patrick Lockwood. But technically, in this case, simply just Patrick, because I would like to not be sued or anything fun like that. So welcome. I'm so glad that you're here to watch, listen, share, comment, and the like. This is UnShrink Me. And if you're new, UnShrink Me is a weekly set of rants and back and forth with people who chat to essentially talk about psychology and especially therapy, because in therapy land, which is the world's worst theme park ever created, a lot of bullshit happens and a lot of people either don't get help or get hurt by it. So I spend half of this podcast at least looking through tweets on Twitter talking about, or X, whatever you call it, talking about therapy, clinical psychology, and the like. I try to stay away from the culture war to the extent possible, but, generally it's kind of impossible to stay all the way away from it. So, that will show up here and there too. Just know these are my opinions. They don't represent any of the businesses I'm affiliated with. They don't represent the university I'm affiliated with. So please leave them alone and attack me only if you don't like me. And if you don't like me, what is your problem? We're here to have fun and hang out. I am on your side. In fact, I'm on the public side. I'm trying to protect the public essentially from the profession and all the ways in which the profession of professional therapy is really messed up. So without further delay, this is UnShrink Me. Welcome to episode 11. It's weird to be back at this and streaming again and back to episode 11 already. There's so much on the agenda this week. So much has happened. So much has happened. And before we get going, my unofficial, not sponsor, Celsius, is here to keep me sane. That's good shit. So, let's take a look at what is on the agenda for today. Looks like there's a number of posts, studies that have come out, things to talk about, and we will go through as many as we can get through in about an hour. Please feel free to chat, ask questions, share, etc. Everyone is welcome to participate. This is not just me ranting. It can be just me ranting, but, feel free to participate. So, of all the things that are currently on my mind right now, I think the one I'd like to discuss first is a post by one of my friends, one of my acquaintances / friends on X or Twitter, however you want to talk about it. And his handle is at the ROCESWORLD, at the Rocks World. And my buddy Rock is, I think, hilarious and sharp and just a good guy. So I'm going to tweet about his post real quick before I dig into it. Okay, so he put out something 4 days ago. 4 days ago. And 4 days ago, there was this post. I think he reposted an Instagram video, believe it or not. And I think it'd be good if we could have a concerted conversation about this Instagram video. So I don't know this person, but her Instagram handle is at Raquel, RAQUEL, _ capacity _ expert. And she gave this really long, for Instagram, minute and 17, talk about how essentially there's a societal-wide celebration of the concept of being a victim and being less than and being marginalized, and using your trauma and your victimization experiences as social currency. Now, the other thing that's notable about this video, as much as, again, I'm not a culture warrior, is this is an African American, a black person who is a mental health professional of some kind. I don't know her, so I'm not trying to judge or anything. I just literally haven't taken the time to look. Maybe I should have. And so Raquel's basically, she does this longer discussion of how it's very counterproductive to look at yourself as a victim. And again, I've spoken about this at length on my YouTube channel. A number of the videos I created 5 or 6 years ago talked a lot about this, because what was very popular, at least online in the culture wars, but especially at the university level of things and the political level of things, is how everyone's fighting to be the biggest victim. There was even a South Park episode that talked about who is the biggest victim in the Victim Olympics and the Oppression Olympics, and it's been a part of the zeitgeist for the past, I'd say, 15 years solidly. And that's a problem. That's a problem, just like Raquel says. So this is me actually agreeing with Raquel. I'm not going to criticize her. This is not a rant against her. This is a rant in agreement with her. Now, a lot of this is changing, to be fair. However, it's very, very important that people understand that there is a world of difference between I was victimized, as in past tense, as in I was assaulted, I was raped, I was traumatically neglected, and all the things that would be rationally, reasonably considered having been victimized, which I think no one would doubt or disagree with, especially in my profession. There's a world of difference between that versus I am currently a victim. And those two attitudes are very different things. And so she does an excellent job. If you're on Twitter or X, please check out the thing I just reposted from the Rock's world, my buddy Rock, who's awesome. Because genuinely speaking, when people choose, and I'm going to use the word choice because even though that's definitely going to piss some people off, it's a fact. When people choose to hold on to the perception of themselves as a victim, and I'm speaking very specifically right now, when you choose to hold on to an identity that is victim-focused, even if, let's say, it's a pie chart, let's say your self-identity has 8 slices to it, but if the largest slice of the pie in your brain, even if it's only 30% of your identity, is I'm a victim because I'm a racial minority, a sexual or gender minority, and a recent immigrant, whatever it is. And it might even be technically true, very realistically true, that you live in a society that doesn't like you. Like, I'm a sexual, for instance, I'm not straight, which puts me in the category of sexual minority, right? I have people who wish I were dead. I have people who would like to throw me off of buildings. I have people in this country, in this state, in this city who think me and my husband are disgusting and stuff. So, like, I'm aware that there are people who do not care for me and or find me disgusting. I'm acutely aware of that. And that's true for anyone from a marginalized background and or a minority background. So I'm aware that you can be part of a minority group and currently be experiencing oppression, or on the more mild side of the spectrum, just discrimination of some kind. And there's an entire spectrum of discrimination. It's very mild and not very obvious and not very pervasive. And then there's like big, overt, nasty, disgusting discrimination that happens. That's all real. So I'm saying all of that is real. Everything I just said is real. And what I'm about to say in no way, shape, or form dismisses or downplays the very real experiences of on the milder end of discrimination to the more severe end of extreme oppression and things like that. These are all real things. And how you choose to see yourself, number one, but number two, how you choose to leverage that identity in the social political sphere is a different story. Because if you are attempting to negotiate the social landscape and the political landscape by being the biggest victim, or at minimum worst case, trying to use victim mentality to gain status in an argument or a discussion, you're not actually being honest about the whole landscape of A, who you are, B, society, and C, how to show up in these discussions, because life is very complicated. Social dynamics are very complicated. Political dynamics are very complicated. So pretending we can neatly categorize people into these intersectional hierarchies, where if you're a black Uzbekistani clown performer who happens to be missing a leg and is trans, you are the most victimized person on the planet, that's a terrible way of looking at people in society. It's not to say that some of those things aren't real and they don't matter in this present moment. But if that's the main way you focus on yourself, there's a problem. Because what you're looking at are all the ways in which you're different. And for some of us, it's absolutely true that we can't not be different. So, for instance, many people in my community, in the LGBT community, are very gender diverse and gender queer or whatever, gender bending, like David Bowie's of the past and things like that, you know. So there's a number of gay guys who are extremely effeminate, and some of that's affected, as in fake, and some of that is just who they actually are. They're just higher estrogen folks or whatever. And that's awesome because they're different and whatever. Be different and that's fine. And so they're going to have a different experience in the world because the world is expecting them to some degree to conform to some gender norms and some sexuality norms and so on and so forth. And so stereotypes can reinforce themselves because of that. And that's not always good and not always bad. It's complicated because people and life is complicated. The problem we face is if you find yourself always looking for a fight because you're always a victim, then all you're going to see are enemies. You're either going to see allies or enemies. You're going to engage in what we call in the profession black and white thinking or dichotomous thinking. And guess how bad that is for your mental health? It doesn't reinforce personal agency and autonomy. It reinforces a less than way of thinking. It reinforces a fear or a trauma way of thinking. And that's not healthy, I would say. So props to Raquel. Thank you, my friend Rock, for sharing this post. I think it's an awesome post. I hope you all go listen and maybe follow her on Instagram because we need more voices across the political spectrum, because like most of the anti-woke, right-leaning, conservative folks or centrists, whatever, are like, stop victim mentality, and that's fine. But like the truth of the matter is victim mentality helps nobody. It really doesn't. So there's, again, a world of difference between having been victimized, currently being victimized and oppressed and discriminated against, versus my personality, my self-concept as a victim. Those are not the same thing. And when we finally learn how to see ourselves as the complicated creatures that we actually are, living in complicated social dynamics, we might have a better understanding of ourselves, number one, and the people we, supposedly think are our enemies. I'm nobody's enemy. But like when we start to think, oh, it's more complicated than that, then it gets a little easier to actually navigate this very politicized, media-driven, fear porn kind of world. Oh, that's good shit. All right, so post number 1, done and done. Number dos. Excuse me. So this is a post I put out 2 days ago, and it was in response to something a political commentator named Justin Amash, I'm not sure. His handle is at JUSTINAMASH. His original post was, which I quote tweeted, "Partisanship makes people really stupid." And my response in my quote tweet was, so many otherwise intelligent people become horrific retards when their reactionary tendencies are triggered by politics, in quotes, justice, and related concepts. And then I actually went a little bit further and I quoted myself and said a little bit more, which I'm going to read here. And I'm going to defend this and stand by this because there's something really important going on in the world. And the politics is a trap. And that's why I want to talk about this. I said, by the way, in quotes, horrific retards is not me being metaphorical. If you look at the behavior of patterns of people with an IQ south of approximately 80, it's sadly much more consistent than not, actually, across all people. So some examples of consistent behavior you find with people IQ south of 80. Number 1, they're easily emotionally overwhelmed by more complex or larger amounts of information. Number 2, they're relatively lacking in self-regulation skills. Number 3, they have difficulty resolving discrepancies between new information and old information. And number 4, they often are insistent about what they believe they know despite limited knowledge about the topic. And I said many, many more commonalities. And going a little bit further, the horrific, in quotes, part is the disgustingly aggressive behavior of the politically partisan culture warriors in the name of God or conservatism or compassion or the poor or the marginalized, etc. If you're one of these politically reactionary people, I said, you are part of the problem. You are the problem. You are a cuck to the government and the news media corporations. They own you. So these might not sound like super compassionate words for a clinical psychologist to say, and again, in the spirit of just being a regular person, I'm allowed to have an opinion about the way society functions. And here's how society currently functions, especially on social media. Now, maybe in your day-to-day life, if you're just at a coffee shop or a restaurant, it's not a huge deal. But many of these social media companies, the TikToks of the world and the Instagrams and the Twitter and X's and whatever fucking Trump's platform is called, all these things, Truth Social, what an idiotic thing. These are platforms that have algorithms that incentivize us hating each other. Incentivize fear and anger and outrage and lust and all the kind of like attention-grabbing emotions. The more mundane thoughts are not typically what gets you a lot of attention. Right? Like I had a really good day today, and here's a picture of my cats. Like people do like seeing my cats, but the truth of the matter is that we have an attention economy. And the attention economy is mostly driven by our tech overlords. And what they want is clicks and likes. And so the problem that we face is the people who are more incendiary, which, I'll be honest, I think what I said was very incendiary. So this is me kind of like giving in to the Matrix, in Andrew Tate's words. The basic premise here is we live in an attention economy, in the social media world at least, which is not a one-to-one correlation with real life in any way, shape, or form, that is very focused on us being angry with each other and afraid of each other. These emotions grab our attention and help us engage, for sure. That and I think lust, probably, or money. Anything status-oriented. And so I really do genuinely believe that These algorithms and then our culture war discourse around politics in particular takes otherwise intelligent people and brings their IQ down to 80 or 50 even. Because otherwise intelligent people who have something reasonable to say about philosophy or psychology or neuroscience or whatever it is, right? And then they just become these like obese heavyweight champions of boxing or something. They're just disgusting and ugly in how they function in the world. Which is so weird because in their private lives and their day-to-day experiences, they're perfectly decent people. But when it comes to these topics, they just become gross and disgusting because they say the first thing their ego or their id wants them to say. They say the most reactionary, I want to fight thing. And what's worse is we don't even take accountability for our behavior or accountability for our team's supposed behavior. And we become overly tribalistic, which is why I wrote my book, The Fear Problem. Check it out on YouTube. It's there for free. You don't even have to buy it. It's an audiobook. So I just think it's disgusting and retarded. It is of low intellectual capability. People's behavior demonstrates little actual thinking. And that's a problem because society is complicated. And when we take these overly simplistic, primitive ways of functioning towards each other, when we could have each other's backs, it just kind of separates us. And I kind of think that that's what the conglomerates and the news media people and the politicians want. I think the more afraid we are of each other, the more we hate each other, the more we talk badly about each other, the more we want to fight the good fight. And there's nothing I'm saying on Twitter that is ever going to change society. Even if I get 1 million followers and become popular and famous and Jordan Peterson or something, I will never be drastically changing society because society is complicated. And there are so many top-down systemic problems with the federal government and economics and culture, that I can do nothing about. You know, even if I was as famous as Elon Musk or Jordan Peterson or who else is, or Donald Trump or RFK or any of the other politicians, I would have no ability to actually change society. I'm acutely aware of the fact that changing culture takes time. Changing the legal system takes a very long time, right? And so because of that, my years of being a clinician has told me that we have to be patient, number one, but also we have to be honest about the problem. So what I'm doing in that post more than anything is trying to be honest about how our behavior sucks when it comes to politics. I wish more people would actually leave it alone and focus more on fixing their life and fixing their well-being, because that will do the bottom-up thing much better than trying to like tweet your way and scream your way towards fixing the top-down problems. So, my encouragement to you is to not let politics turn you into a horrific retard. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care if you're a free Palestine person or a pro-Israel person or whatever. I don't care what your beliefs are. I care about you taking the best possible care of yourself and not letting your reactionary sides of your mind run your life, because that seems to be how people get sick and get miserable. And I don't want that for anybody. I don't care what your politics are. And imagine if we were all a little bit healthier, how much easier it would be to deal with each other and the world. So, don't be a horrific retard. Please, it's not worth it. All right. Next topic from one of my favorite people on Twitter, at @TweetATherapist. No BS therapist. Love her stuff. She was retweeting somebody who said, a professor friend of mine recently got a paper submission whose first sentence was "gladly!" Here's a version rewritten with some spelling errors. We are so cooked, it's not even funny. So essentially, and her post was, this will continue to happen for several reasons, one of which is the attitude, I don't work for my professors work for you. Or my professors work for me. Um, so here's the deal. As a professor, so I've been teaching for about 8 years. It's been a lot of fun. I've had a lot of success in helping students, I think, become more scientifically skeptical and scientifically minded and aware of their countertransference and their bias and their preconceived judgments about themselves and other people. And I feel really good about that because I think that's my job as a mentor in clinical psychology, as a psychologist, as a professor. And, that's a challenging one because sometimes you do deal with people who are more entitled, for instance, or who are cheating. And it's definitely true that higher education has changed drastically in the last 10 years in particular. It really has, in terms of the types of students, the quality of students, the emotional resilience of students, all sorts of variables have changed. And I'm not just trying to sound like Jonathan Haidt with his anxious generation stuff, or Jean Twenge. Sorry, Jean, not Janelle. So I'm not trying to parrot those talking points. I'm just trying to say, I can tell you as a professor in graduate psychology, things are different. Things have changed, especially at the undergrad level, but even at the grad level. So what I will say is, she's right that this is going to continue happening. It's true that AI is a big deal. It is 100% true, not exaggerating, that AI will continue to be a problem, I would say, for some professors, especially at the more undergrad level. And I would be shocked if nobody in my grad program had used AI to help write papers or whatever. We talk about AI in our faculty meetings. And so, I am not anti-AI in school or anything of that nature. I think it's a really cool tool, just like Google Search and Google Scholar are really cool tools. I'm not anti-Google, believe it or not, even though I think there are many horrific monsters who work at YouTube and Google. What I would say, very straightforwardly, is that when you find a better way to have a better relationship with this tool, people will probably try to cheat less, would be my guess. So what universities need to do, what faculties need to do, in my humble opinion, is become the parents they're supposed to be. Have some standards, be okay with things not being perfect, and be an adult. Be realistic about what this tool is, the fact that it's not going anywhere. If your department is solidly anti-AI, then you're going to have to find technological solutions there's the Turnitin thing where you can see if a paper was written by somebody else or parts were found on the internet somewhere. You can do that kind of thing for AI. I don't know what that looks like, and if there's an AI company who can create something like that to see if something was written with AI, they'll make a lot of money in higher education. They'll sell that shit to universities all day. But I don't care, honestly, if my students have used AI to help them create the structure of their paper or use it as a spell checker or grammar checker or idea checker. I don't mind that. What I mind is when students are lazy and stupid about it. What I don't like is when students give up on thinking. Which is especially important in graduate school clinical psychology. Because what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to create a good thinker and to not let the AI do the thinking for you. If the AI is doing grunt work, like looking up references and resources and fact-checking ideas, that's fine. It's not great because I still think there's something really important to being the person who's fact-checking. Like, I don't want you to use AI to scan the peer-reviewed paper because I want you to learn how to critically analyze research papers. But if you're going to use like ChatGPT or XAI or whatever it is to like, please help me find 15 papers that were published in the last 10 years on this topic, awesome. It's doing that grunt work a little bit easier for you. I'm down for that. Now it's your job to go fact check and make sure those references, those papers are good papers, and read those papers and make them like perfectly sound for your argument that you're writing in your paper, right? So I think there's a way to use AI to make your academic life easier, which I don't have a problem with, just like no one has a problem with using the internet or Google Scholar. Like, imagine if professors were like, no, 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 no. You have to buy the paper version of the journal and you have to highlight it by hand and bring your highlighted version of the journal to class for class. That's fucking stupid. Nobody would do that because everyone's cool with the internet and everyone's cool with Google Scholar and EBSCO and all these services to help you quickly find articles. So if AI is giving you summaries of these papers and it's helping you determine if you should read those papers or not, cool. It's still kind of inhibiting your critical thinking process. It's taking some of the grunt work out of it in a good way and in a bad way. So I'm not like all happy about it, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But if you're using it to just do all the work for you and it's going to summarize everything for you and paraphrase things for you, then you're just being lazy. And shame on you for being lazy. You know? Shame on you for not taking your education more seriously. You're spending all this money, or the federal government is giving you all this money to get an education. And shame on you for wasting your time and your money and being lazy. I think that's fucking stupid. But if you're going to use it the right way as a tool in a limited scope like I'm describing, where it does some of the weeding out things for you so you can go read more critically the things it finds for you, that's fine. If you're going to put your paper in ChatGPT and spell check it, is the grammar good, is the logic good? Great. It'll be like a second reader because like in the old days, we encourage you to like practice your paper out loud or read it to a friend, or if you're going to give it like a talk or a presentation. And so ChatGPT can be the same thing, just AI version. Now, the downside of all these AI smart platforms, Grok AI, whatever, is all of them have all sorts of bias built into their code, and they're not going to all give you the same perfectly objective feedback. You know, all of these AI models apparently hallucinate ideas, and so you should be very careful about how you deal with this. So if you're using AI to be lazy, shame on you. That's stupid. Don't shortchange yourself in your education. You're in college to learn how to think. And depending upon the level of college, like bachelor's, master's, doctorate, you're learning a specific set of skills for critical thinking for a particular job purpose. So don't cheat yourself at being better at your job just because you're exhausted. You have to work multiple jobs to pay for grad school. Like I did that, and I had no ChatGPT or Grok AI or whatever it is. So please be careful. Feel free to use it, in my opinion. This is my Patrick Lockwood's opinion, not Professor Lockwood's opinion. But please, 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 don't cheat yourself. Don't be stupid. Don't engage in plagiarism. I know a lot of us in faculties are trying to figure out what exactly is plagiarism nowadays, but it's not okay to cheat yourself and cheat the system. It is okay to use it in a limited way as a tool to make it a little bit easier to get through some of the grunt work, I think. That's my opinion. So I think she's correct. I don't think AI is going away. I don't think lazy students are going away. I think there's always going to be a subset of students who is undermotivated or mentally ill or really going through a lot of life stress, all of which is normal and not inherently like evil or something. And so you have to be a good adult. Like faculty and administrators have to be adults. We have to be like, listen, these are basic standards of academic integrity and honesty and intellectual honesty. If you're violating them by cheating or using AI, then you can't be part of this program. I'm sorry. Like, that just seems reasonable, you know? But who knows? All right. Next up, this one's fun. About a day ago, roughly speaking, someone named Jade Stanton, and her handle is at Jade the BPD Coach. And her tweet was, "Wild take of the day," in quotes. "My therapist told me almost everyone, in caps, with anxiety that doesn't go away with lifestyle changes really has level 1 autism." She said, to be so bold. I'm going to tweet about this real quick. Excuse me. So, here we go. "My therapist told me almost everyone with anxiety that doesn't go away with lifestyle changes really has level 1 autism." So, I don't know how many ways in which I can say this is wrong and stupid. So, a lot of people have anxiety for various reasons. Some people have anxiety because of situational stressors. Some people have anxiety because they suck at coping. Some people have anxiety because their life generally sucks, which is a lot of people nowadays. And then other people have anxiety because they have a diagnosable mental health problem. Some people are a combination of all those things I just rattled off and more. Some people have a lot of anxiety because they would score high on trait neuroticism in the 5-factor model of personality. So there's just so many reasons why people are more prone to anxiety or currently experiencing more anxiety. And the people who struggle with basic coping skills are not autistic. That's absurd. It's really stupid, actually. It really is. To me, at least, it's very, very stupid. Because what it speaks to is this idea that there's a simple rubric you can explain people's behavior with. And that's just, it's not true in the DSM-5-TR of the American Psychiatric Association. It's not true in clinical psychology training in the world over, in psychiatry training. It's just really not that simple. It's kind of never that simple, if that makes sense. So here's what I would say, or here's what I would encourage people to think about in this experience. I want you to imagine that your simple assessment of a person as autistic or anxious or whatever it is was actually accurate. What are you going to do when it's not accurate? Because you have a predisposition, you have a bias that there's a simple answer. But if you're actually trying to help somebody, you probably need to understand all the ins and outs of what are causing their anxiety. So let's say for the sake of argument, it's true that some folks who are neurodivergent or whatever are more prone to anxiety because of some difference, right? So someone I know who is autistic is very sensitive to louder than average sounds. So like really loud cars, motorcycles, really loud alarm clocks, things like that. It just really drives them crazy. So that's a curse because they're built differently in a way that impairs their ability to like tolerate regular life, because you can't control the world around you with a bunch of shit happening at all times that's often loud. That's just the way it is. So that person might have situational anxiety because of the sound sensitivity problem. But that sound sensitivity thing might also be a superpower to some degree because like maybe they're good at paying extra attention when people are talking. That could be good. So it's not all bad, obviously. But beyond even that, it's probably not the case that it's just autism, right? Because most people, even with one particular diagnosis, have anxiety because of circumstantial things. Because most people's lives are kind of difficult. And I think if you're a regular person, your life is kind of difficult. I think very few people on the planet have like a boring, not difficult life. It'd be shocking. if people had like super easy lives. I don't know anyone in the world who has like a, it's all caviar and I sit here and I don't do anything and I don't worry about anything. Like the wealthier people I know in my like convenient sample of a life, their lives are kind of difficult because once you start making some money, you have to maintain that somehow. And that's hard. Oh, it looks like Sebastian chimed in and said everyone has sound sensitivity to a degree. Yeah, I'm sure there's a spectrum of different like sound sensitivities, softer sounds or louder sounds or dull sounds or repetitive sounds, whatever it is. But I'd say there is like a normal curve of sound sensitivity where most people, 66% or whatever, are probably like not particularly affected by higher or lower intensity sounds, would be my guess, because most traits in the world follow a Gaussian distribution. So, but that's fair. But yeah, I mean, it's like I would be so shocked if autism was the cause of people being anxious and having a harder time coping. Like that's just fucking stupid. And any therapist, any professional, any counselor, clinician, psychiatrist who has a simple assessment and diagnosis process is the part of the problem. Part of why my profession sucks so hard is because so many people with degrees of every level and every background and Ivy League schools and scammy professional schools and everything in between, literally, there's so many. It's simple. It's this. It was this thing I learned in grad school, because I don't know if you all know this. There's research out there that shows the vast majority of people who get an advanced degree, their level of learning stops. So whatever they learned by the time they graduated, that's where they stay for most of their career, which is fucking insane, because you're supposed to be getting continuing education credits or CEUs or whatever, or CMUs or CMEs or whatever. And like, literally speaking, if most people don't actually learn shit because they're happy and satisfied with the level of knowledge they got in graduate school, that means they suck. They're normal, but they suck at their job, because there's always more to learn. One of the things I love about being a professor is I love that I'm forced to constantly check my assumptions and update my slides and think about the shit that, like, there's some grad student who was just like me in grad school who's like, I'm going to get that professor because I want to feel smart, which is awesome. I love those people. I love the overachievers, because it's fun to find the people who are just like me and help them calm the fuck down, partially. But also it's fun to find the people who are like going to poke holes in what I think I know, because eventually they're going to say something I haven't read. They're going to talk about an article or a paper or an idea I'm not fully aware of, which is awesome. But most people in my profession aren't like that. Most people, they like what they know. What they know is comfortable. It helps them orient themselves, because for a lot of people in the clinical world in particular, they're not really here to help people. This is probably going to want to be my most controversial takes on clinical psychology, in my opinion, which is I don't think the vast majority of people who get into the field of clinical psychology, be they people with a master's degree, a doctorate degree, a psychiatric background and training, or even just drug counselors, technicians, people with a RAD-T or a KDAC, I think the vast majority of people who get into this profession, the helping, healing profession, as it were, are not really here to help other people. I think the vast majority of people, their primary motivation for being in the profession is to make themselves feel better. And they feel better by being smarter, or by having power over people, or they feel better by healing other people, because then they see that they can help themselves at some point, but never actually do usually. So I think the vast majority of people in this profession are on the sicker side of things. And I'm pretty sure the American Psychological Association, for all of its many, many, many disgusting flaws, has good data that shows how sick our profession is in terms of the surveys that have been done, in terms of divorce rates and depression and all these things. Sebastian says, if we lived in a healthy society, we wouldn't need mental health services. Amen to that. God, I would give my left nut for like society to figure its shit out with just diet and exercise and sleep. I think if those three things were fixed, a lot of the bullshit that was happening right now, like economically and politically, would be so much more tolerable. and manageable, that there wouldn't be a bunch of generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder and all these other diagnoses. I would just love that so much. I would love to be out of a job. Don't fire me. I would love to be out of a job because life is better for most people. That would be awesome. And I just don't think people care about each other enough. And more importantly, I don't think the average clinician is smart enough and self-aware enough to actually realize how they're hurting people. I think they're too self-involved or unaware of their countertransference to be formal about it, to actually be clear on their average way of showing up with their patients and their colleagues. It's a very sick profession. And so I'm not trying to say therapy shouldn't be a thing anymore. I'm just saying we should be extremely skeptical about the people who say they're here to help. Like there's this old Ronald Reagan quote, I'm from the government and I'm from the government and I'm here to help. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are I'm from the government and I'm here to help. I actually like that quote, not politically, but for this purposes. Like, I'm here to help because I want to help people, kind of thing. Like, that's horrifying. I'm always concerned when I read like future graduate student admission essays and things like that, where it's like, well, because I was traumatized or whatever it was, I really want to give back. It's like that's not a great reason to get an advanced degree, take out a bunch of student loans, and become like a scholar practitioner. That's a bad idea, actually. What I really believe is better is if you want to look at all the systems and layers and see how you can show up better to help in the process. And so it's a little more complicated than I have trauma and I want to help fix the trauma of the world. I want to save the cute puppies and the people. It's like, you just don't need a degree for that, number one. And number two, it's not that you have to be perfectly healthy to be part of the profession. I don't think that'll ever happen. I don't think I'm that healthy. Obviously, you can tell. But I can't imagine a world where we actually take seriously how unwell, how mismanaged the mental health is in the profession before things actually get better. And clinical psychology. And that's on top of the fact that there's all these payment and economic problems. There's like all these apps that have like telehealth therapists that just like they churn people in and out. So economically, that's really screwing up society. Managed care companies are screwing up society and mental health care. So many problems are happening economically and socially. And then from the bottom up side, you just have so many under-healed, less than healed people who are less than aware. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem because the people who say they're here to help are some of the sickest people out there. And they're not fully aware of it. They're partially aware of it. And they're not really taking accountability for how unhealed they are. And so I'm not anti-grad school, clearly because I still want to teach and enjoy teaching. And I'm not anti-therapy. I'm not anti-psychiatry. I'm anti-sick people who are unaware of how sick they are. And so I don't want to be mean. I have grace for the fact that some people weren't given opportunities to have good supervisors who could point out their countertransference or patterns of pathology. They didn't have good professors. You know, there are a lot of burnt out professors who have a hard time showing up correctly for their students. That's a fact. Burnout is an endemic problem in healthcare in general. Nurses, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists of all kinds. And so we really need to do better about being accountable about burnout in our profession. And I think until we have that conversation more frequently and more openly, it's going to be the case that we're going to hurt a lot of people, number one. And number two, just not help a lot of people. Because we're really trying to fix ourselves. We're really trying to fix what's wrong in us or what we think is broken in us erroneously. I don't think anyone's broken. I think some people are stupid, but I don't think they're broken. And if you're getting an advanced degree to so-called help people, it's your responsibility to actually take a look in the mirror and go, What am I doing to contribute to this patient's pathology? How am I showing up in a way that's not helpful? Because none of us are perfect. None of us show up perfectly when we're trying to help people. That's just a fact. And so I'm not trying to be overly harsh or mean about it. I'm just trying to say, like, it's a thing. It's a well-known thing. And there are good professors and good clinical supervisors. And there are good therapists and psychiatrists and MFTs and LPCCs and psychologists and everything. There's a lot of good professionals, so I'm not trying to shit on everyone. It's just that there's also a great many people who are sick and biased and underhealed and stupid, who believe they know more than they actually do. That whole Dunning-Kruger thing. And it's not helpful. It actually hurts people. So, all that ranting aside to say, if you are in the helping professions, please take better care of yourself. Please figure out your bias and your countertransference so that you can help more people and hurt fewer people. That is my plea. And maybe operate with the idea that you're wrong from time to time, or more frequently. Because I do. All right. The last Twitter post of the day that I'll be ranting about is a post by, I assume, a psychiatrist. He says he's a psychiatrist. His name is Paul Minot. I assume is how you say it. Minot. His handle is at PaulMinot MD. Paul Minot MD. He said, I've been a psychiatrist for 40 years. The alleged epidemic, in quotes, of autism, in quotes, wasn't caused by vaccines. It was created by psychiatrists, he says. Every decade or two, a bunch of us get together in a commercially contaminated process of redefining our disorders in a book called the DSM, currently the DSM-5-TR. In the last couple of editions, we have greatly expanded the definition of autism, which used to apply to largely institutionalized patients, as portrayed by Dustin Hoffman in the movie Rain Man. Now, the definition has expanded to a wide swath of the general population, including a huge number of people that never would have merited that diagnosis back in the day, hence our so-called epidemic. Although I must admit, video games and other virtual fixations may contribute to it as well. But help is on the way. Sooner or later, Big Pharma is going to come out with a drug for it. Maybe even a vaccine, which is funny. So, Paul, there's a lot there. Before I get there. Sebastian said, the mental health field is dominated by people who are complicit with the problem, agreed, and are now in student loan debt. Yeah, I would kill to have my debt disappear. That'd be awesome. I'm not trying to kill anyone. It's a metaphor. It's a figure of speech. Don't ban me. Yeah, it's a lot of people are complicit in the, I want to keep people sick because I only know how to relate to people when they're sick, right? Like if I were to talk about a wide open secret in the mental health field, it's this. Therapists, coaches, counselors, whatever, psychiatrists are invested in they're psychologically invested in keeping their patients sick because they only know how to relate to people when they're sick. This is psychoanalysts in particular. This is a lot of people. They are accustomed to pathology being the norm. And so because of that, it's weird or uncomfortable or confusing when people are better. In fact, they miss opportunities to see people healthier when they actually are. And they're less interested in being healthier. And because many of us are, like, I have a house's worth of student loan debt. I would love for it to not be a burden and affecting my life. I have to work 3 or so jobs to pay for everything in my life. Now, some of it's luxury, some of it's not. Some of it's necessity, some of it's my student loan payment. And all of that, I would love to disappear so I could be more objective and unbiased about what sickness is and how urgent it is to help people, right? I think that's true. And I think just a lot of people are very invested, very, very invested in their patients being sick because it's good for their business model, but it's also good for their ego. Because this is how I see reality, is that people are sick in a way that requires lots of help over a long period of time, which is true for a segment of the population with mental illness. But the vast majority of people who come to therapy don't even need therapy. There's so many worried well people in like outpatient therapy all the time. They have a private practice paid for a friend, which is such a waste of money. So I want that to go away, but it takes time. Now back to Paul, Dr. Minot, if I'm saying your name correctly. I don't mean to say it incorrectly. So Paul says, I think it's not the vaccines that cause autism. It's actually the psychiatrist who created such a wide and loose definition of autism that there's no way that everyone who's being diagnosed with it actually has it, which is probably fair because I think overdiagnosis happens with everything in the book, right? Depression, PTSD, anxiety disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders, autism spectrum personality disorders. There's tons of overdiagnosis, and I think all of us are aware of that. Is that the predominant cause of the upswing, the uptick in autism diagnoses? You know, this is one of those weird things where like there's a lot of camps that are at war right now in psychiatry and medicine and in the culture war, because there's like the RFK Jr. vaccines caused autism thing, or it's a hypothesis we should investigate more. Joe Rogan just had this very strange, very biased lady on. Let me pull this up real quick so I can name drop her. Let's see. I'm just going to check my YouTube history while I'm live streaming on YouTube. Her name is Suzanne Humphries. She's an MD, Suzanne Humphries. And she made this really weird comment in her Joe Rogan podcast about Andrew Wakefield. So his data was fraudulent, and he had no real proof, which I'm not pro or anti-vaccines. I don't give a shit. It's just the univariate fallacy is a problem, right? You cannot blame one thing for a complicated, like mental health diagnoses, personality differences, neurodivergences are complicated. The reason they show up neurodevelopmentally probably has dozens of variables, right? So if it's even conceivably possible that getting too many vaccines all at once as an infant or something, maybe that's bad and stupid. Maybe we should spread them out, whatever. But like, if that's the only thing, I would be shocked. Like, look at all the garbage people are being fed. Like, look at all the terrible nutrition that young kids are getting fed nowadays. Look at all the drugs kids are taking. Look at all the microplastics and crap like that in people's ball sacks. Like, look at all there's so much horrific, like, micro stuff that probably contributes to neurodevelopment issues and neuroinflammation in the womb and in early development. There's probably so many variables that I just can't stand it when people blame one thing. Because, like, yeah, I don't trust the pharmaceutical industry at all whatsoever. I think they're just scammy, greedy pieces of shit who occasionally help people. But what I genuinely believe is that it can't be that simple. It would be so shocking if it were that simple, because there's no research anywhere in history that says there's one particular cause for any particular mental health diagnosis. It is so very rare that someone develops like a delirium because of lead poisoning. It happens from time to time, but like heavy metal toxicity is not the number one cause of delirium. Delirium happens for multiple causes, for medical reasons, for drug reasons, for toxin reasons, all sorts of reasons. So there are so many causes for so many of these things. And when we blame one thing, it just feels so stupid to me. So like, yes, you can be skeptical about vaccines. Maybe our diet sucks. Maybe we should talk about that. Maybe we should talk about vitamin deficiencies more. There's just so many things, but like, it cannot possibly be Dr. whatever your name is, lady. Like, it can't possibly be just the vaccines. There's just so much crap happening that is affecting us. So please, stop with the bullshit of saying one thing is the cause. There's just so many things going on. There's so much that is bad for our health happening as we speak today, in terms of microplastics and vitamin deficiencies and people sitting around all day and becoming fat and stupid. They're like, there's so many problems that we can do more about to help our health, that will help our mental health. And so, no, I don't think it's just overdiagnosis because we expanded the criteria, Paul. I think it's that plus nutrition issues, that plus genetics, that plus differences in other personality traits. It's that plus crappy parenting. It's that plus screen time. It's that plus, drugs and microplastics and all. It's dozens of things. And anyone who thinks it's one thing is not a real scientist or a good professional, in my opinion. So, rant is done for the day. I think that's it for my rants for this week. And I appreciate Sebastian for coming and chatting, and for all you for watching and listening. Please like and share and subscribe. Please help me get the word out, because a more appropriately skeptical public about clinical psychology and psychiatry will mean that we have more informed consumers who take advantage of better therapists who get better help. That's what I want. The whole purpose of this podcast is mostly to criticize the people in power and the industry and the institutions, not to shit on specific people per se, even though I do pick on particular tweets by particular people. Because if we can change the system and change the consumer's attitudes towards mental health and mental health care, then I think people will get better and put up with BS less. That's what I want. So please like and share and subscribe. Please help get the word out about this so I can help more people get the help they actually need and be appropriately critical and not cynical, just appropriately skeptical so they can live a better life. Because I'm optimistic things can get better. And there's a lot we can do in a grassroots way to make society better when it comes to mental health and better consumers, informed consumers of mental health care. So thank you all for coming out and watching and listening. Like, share, and subscribe, blah, blah, blah. And so, as always, I always end with a very bad dad joke. And so here it goes. I once had this patient. He had a touch of the tism. He was a young autistic man. So this young man with a touch of the tism told me in his first session that he was having a lot of shame and anxiety and self-judgment because he was fascinated by owls. He loved owls. He thought owls were beautiful and fascinating and cool. And they're funny and smart and stupid all at once. He loved them, so he was fascinated by them. And we spent the first session together talking about his fascination with owls and all the different types of owls and barn owls and all these things. And some of them are pretty. He showed me pictures, as autistic people often do. And he just spent all this time talking about this one fascination for the entire first session. At the end of the session, he looked at me and he said, "Dr. Lockwood, is it wrong that I have this fascination? Is something weird about me? Should I stop my fascination? Should I do something to change this fascination with owls?" And I said, "No, not at all. It sounds like this is a real hoot.